Hello and welcome to another episode of the New Orchard Show. Today I'm interviewing Claire Bartlett, who's a principal at Woodline Primary. It's a wonderful school sitting approximately 10 kilometres outside of Geelong in Victoria. I came across Woodline in a conversation with a few people while discussing alternative schooling modalities a couple of weeks ago. It was a very interesting conversation, quite dense, as we tried to cover quite a lot of ground. And some of the things we did cover was things like failures of mainstream, current outdated educational models, dependence on too much technology, illogical age separation between students, size of the classes that are simply too big for a single teacher, issues with the volume of homework, but also lack of community building or connection with the community in the educational process. What was evident to me when I first looked at Woodline's website was that the school was addressing some of the issues that I've just pointed out here, and that made me curious about how they were doing it and what were some of the trade-offs that naturally and inevitably had to come into the equation. And that is why I've reached out to Claire and asked her a bit of her time just so I can conduct this interview. When trying to take a good and deep look at the educational system, one has to start with its origins. You have to take yourself back to a different time in history. There was a time in not too distant past when children spent most of their days either in the field, farming, or some type of a factory with their parents. Then in early 1900s, different types of child labor laws were introduced, and just like that, classroom became the most popular place for children to spend their time, while their parents continued to work at the factory or on a farm. Government naturally took ownership of the curriculum, its administration, and with its cookie-cutter approach, set the foundations for a system that was essentially designed to output obedient workers ready for the challenges of the industrial age. If we fast forward into the present, it becomes instantly evident just how much the times have changed. Instead of factory jobs, our hyper-novel world demands constant innovation and fast adaptability to rapidly changing environment. If that original system was fit for purpose in the 19th or 20th century is not something I'm going to delve into with Claire in this episode. I'm more interested in what kind of a system would be more suitable for the needs of the 21st century instead, and how are the people behind Woodline Primary setting up the school with that objective in mind. I'm going to keep the introduction short today, unlike on some of the previous episodes. Let's just jump straight into the interview and see what Claire has to say about Woodline Primary. Good morning and warm welcome, Claire. I'm very glad you've decided to come on the show and talk to me about the school that you're running, Woodline Primary.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just dive straight into it and start with your biography. So I'm really keen to understand what led you to the current role that you're holding at Woodline, which is the school principal.
Lovely question. So for me, even as a young child, I always wanted to be a teacher. So I had a love of helping people and supporting people. Personally, I didn't enjoy school. I didn't feel seen. I didn't enjoy the learning, but I definitely loved the social aspect of it. Once I became a teacher, I've had a mix of experience in independent schools and government schools, and I've taught from foundation all the way through to 6, so I've been in lots of different contexts and different year levels. I've always had an interest in leadership, so again it comes back to that love of supporting others to be successful. So I've had different roles like early years coordinator and upper years English coordinator and upper primary coordinator. And my last role before this role was deputy head of a junior school, which was a Reggio-inspired school, so which aligns with what we're doing at Woodline. But when this opportunity came up at Woodline, I guess our philosophy at Woodline is fully around wellbeing first, knowing that if we can have that, the learning comes and it's even greater. So I was really attracted to the philosophy and what the founders were trying to do.
Why was Woodline Primary started? I mean, who founded this school and what gap in the market is the school trying to fill?
So our founder is Melanie Austin, and Mel is a mum of 6. At the time, she had 3 primary age children. Her oldest of those 3, when he was in foundation, she felt that the traditional school wasn't meeting his needs. She felt that he was having to armour up for the day and be brave, and get told what to do all day, eat when he was told, go to the toilet when he was told, didn't have any choice and autonomy in his learning, and he really was not wanting to go to school. And she would find that when she picked him up at the end of the day, he would have a lot of big emotions to release from throughout the day. So she ended up actually homeschooling her youngest, well, out of those two, the oldest child and then the next boy as well, because she just felt she couldn't find a school that aligned with their values and what her children were needing. But as those boys got a little bit older, she realised that they really need the social interaction and that community. And she was really wanting a community of like minded families as well. So she decided that she had the resources to be able to build a school. And then she reached out to Lael Stone, who she was a client of Lael's at the time, and said what she wanted to do. And knowing Lael's approach to parenting, asked Lael to help her. So together they co-created Woodline to be a school that children don't have to armour up to go to. They can come and be who they need to be. They can be seen and heard and valued. They can have their emotions listened to throughout the day, so they're not saving it up for when they go home, and that they could have play, lots of outdoor learning, connection with nature, and some freedom and choice within their learning as well.
It's very interesting that you say armor up. This is something that kids have to go through when they wake up in the morning and before school. They have this building anxiety in them. This is something that quite a lot of parents have mentioned to me. So it's interesting that that is the problem that the founders were trying to tackle.
And I think we've seen an increase in that since COVID. I think with remote learning, a lot of children got comfortable learning from home and not maybe having the pressures that they have in a normal school day. And so we've certainly seen an increase of anxiety and separation issues since COVID across all schools.
Yeah, indeed. I think the COVID period will prove to be uniquely direction altering event in the history of our civilization. And we don't even know what sort of issues we'll have to grapple with and deal with over the next 2 or 3 decades that will come out of that period specifically. Anyway, moving on. When I was preparing for this interview, I obviously had a good look at your website, and what I've noticed on one of the pages is that you're listing a couple of school values. Now, these values are connection, environmental responsibility, openness, sense of wonder and curiosity, and honoring the individual. Would you be able to tell us why you've picked this set of values and what do they actually mean day to day at Woodline?
So I'll start with connection, which is one of our core values. And as we know, everyone's well-being, for that to be strong, you need to feel connected. So you need to feel connected to yourself. You need to feel connected to others and have that real sense of belonging. You need to be connected to nature and place and connected to community. So that's certainly something that's at the forefront of everything that we're doing. And we'll always have that in the front of our mind when we're planning our daily rhythms and our weekly rhythms. So doing a lot of self-development work with our team, but also our children as well, getting to know ourselves, who we are as learners and what our needs are, and then developing those really core social skills that are really important and personal capabilities so that we can be part of a group, and then that strong connection to place. And as we know, nature is key for wellbeing as well, and being outside as often as possible. And then community, so making sure we've got those strong links within our community at Woodline, but also the wider local community. And then if we go to openness, that's that real sense of open. So having an open heart, being open to new things, being open to taking risks, trying those new things, open to learning, but also open to others. And so having those open conversations, genuine conversations, finding ways to problem solve any conflict, and how can we all get our needs met. And then honouring the individual. So that's really, we want the children to feel safe to be themselves. So whatever they are and their uniqueness and their special talents and their quirky bits, and we accept them for who they are. We're not trying to make them into something that they're not, and finding ways for them to shine. A sense of wonder and curiosity that goes really beautifully with the Reggio Emilia approach. So we really, I think children are innately curious and in awe of the world, and so really fostering that and providing beautiful contexts and opportunities for them to explore that. And that comes into the play-based learning, the experiential learning, and the concept-based learning as well. So environmental responsibility. So we're on Wadawurrung country, and so a big part of what we do is Indigenous perspectives, cultures, and histories, and knowing that we're caretakers of our place and we have a responsibility to tread lightly and do what we can, and that we can be agents of change to improve how things are.
Yeah, these values make a lot of sense. Did you land on them relatively quickly, or was this a case of experimenting and seeing what resonates with the children and parents? Like, what was the process?
So these were values that the founders and creators chose. So I inherited them. Initially, they had emotional well-being as a sixth value, and we decided to remove that one because it's the overarching value of those five core values. But it's definitely something that as a team we try and we hope that when you arrive at Woodline, you can feel the values. You'll never see them put up on a wall or displayed. It's something that we want embedded in everything that we're doing. And every year we choose a focus value. So this year, our focus value is environmental responsibility. So a lot of our learning is focused around that. Our first year was connection, which makes sense because we're all new to the school and connection was a priority. And we're looking forward to having openness as our focus value next year.
That is really cool. I love that you're putting these values in practical things and getting the entire institutions to live these values. That is awesome. In your welcome statement, again on the website, you say that the children cannot wait to get to school in the mornings and that the parents have difficulty getting them to leave at the end of the day. My question to you is, how is this impressive status quo achieved and how do you maintain it?
I think it's we focus a lot on feeling good, and it's well-being's not always about feeling good because a part of it is needing to be resilient and have those skills to work through hard things. But we try and bring the joy where we can. So starting the mornings with lots of play, we have beautiful grounds, so we've got a lot of space to run around and we've got some really beautiful facilities, so they can't wait to come and play on those. But there's that focus in the morning of connection. So coming together as a group, checking in, how's everyone feeling, and then starting the day with a bit of joy. And then I think because the children can see they have choice in their learning, they want to be here because they're working on projects that interest them. They want to keep learning about whatever those concepts are.
What is the school's capacity at this point in time?
So this year the capacity is 100. Next year we are adding our seventh and final group and we will have 120 children. And that's as big as we will get because we know we need to stay small to do what we're doing.
And that probably is the fundamental difference between somebody making it work in this context or not making it work. Because obviously, as you're scaling the business up, as you're scaling the school up, you'll reach a certain critical mass at some point where the principal setup is going to get a little bit wobbly. And instead of something cohesive, you're going to end up having a Tower of Babel because the size is too big. It just some of the principles it will be harder and harder to apply them in real life. So that's hats off to you that you decided to cap it and keep it limited because you want to make it work. That is very good indeed. Can we talk a little bit about the distinctive features and aspects of the school's curriculum? And how does that specifically contribute to fostering a rich and engaging learning environment for the kids?
Yeah, great question. So we align with the Australian curriculum. So at the end of the day, we are still very accountable to the learning. We do need to, what traditional people would say, cover the curriculum, but we actually like to say that we uncover the curriculum. So yes, the curriculum's there and it's a bit of a map for the learning, But we start with lots of provocations, and then we listen to the children's theories, their wonderings, their questions, and then that guides the direction of the projects. And then from there, we bring in literacy, numeracy, all of the different subjects we bring into that project so that it's purposeful and meaningful. They want to do it. There is that balance. We do have to have explicit teaching moments because you do have to teach the core skills before they can then apply it in the project sense. But I think because we've got our focus on hands-on learning, can we learn outside? Can we go on an excursion? Can we have an incursion? How can we make, really draw the children into what we're trying to uncover in that curriculum?
Well, that sounds awesome. In your school materials, you talk about school being a safe place where children can be vulnerable and discuss their feelings. At least on the surface, there seems to be quite an alignment, I would say, with the current day mainstream, where there is so much focus on discussing feelings and not necessarily building resilience and strong individuals in preparations for adult life. There's massive, massive focus on children's feelings and emotions. There's a lot of criticism out there as well when it comes to this excessive focus on feelings, as I said, and a lot of talk about this leading to different mental health issues, with children not having the right tools to rein things in when they need to. And this is a bit of a controversial question, and I've not done a particularly good job at formulating it. I hope it makes sense. I was just wondering, what is your point of view on this?
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I can understand people's concerns around it. It's not that you're sitting and listening to feelings all day. The idea is that you are equipping the children with the skills to identify how they're feeling, lean into it, work out for themselves what it is that they need to shift those feelings. So it's not about sitting in the feelings for longer than what is needed, but having the opportunity to express them, identify them, find a way to help shift them so that they can come back into balance, so that they can be ready for the learning or be ready to engage positively with a group. I think when it's if people suppress feelings, that absolutely is more detrimental than allowing children to express them. So if we're holding them in, it ends up with things like physical violence. You come to a point where you have these massive outbursts. I would say that, yes, while there might be that fear that listening, it's all about feelings all of the time, it's a little bit misguided in that it is about that resilience building and giving children strategies to cope with challenging situations.
I absolutely agree with you. I think, suppressing feelings does lead to some terrible outcomes, and it's never a good thing, or almost never a good thing. Let's pivot a little bit. I've got a question to you about merit. How does your school orient around merit, if it does orient around merit at all? And what sort of initiatives or strategies do you have in place to ensure all your students feel valued, respected, and sort of universally supported?
So when you're talking merit, are you talking grades and marks?
When I say merit, I'm thinking the quality of outcomes for each and every individual.
We are a school that doesn't place emphasis on grades and marks. We do focus on the process more so than the outcome. So I think I could talk about this for a really long time, because you can have a child who might be really capable in a certain area that doesn't have to put effort in to achieve that high outcome. Whereas you can have a child who has learnt a lot in the process. Their outcome might not still be as what would be considered as great as the other child, but the learning itself has been greater. So it's about that individual approach where you know where each child's at and what they're needing next, so that you're making sure that all children are growing and learning regardless of where they are.
Does that mean that you're still promoting excellence? I mean, if somebody stands out, one of the kids stands out, do they get special attention, or do they get funneled into a special program? How does your school handle that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of children who need extension and need the challenge in learning, and that's why we have small groups. So our groups are capped at 18. So each group has the guide and an assistant. So you've got two adults so that you can make sure you are challenging and extending the children. But I think you get that in any school setting where if you've got a group of children, they're all at different places in their development. So it's about meeting those individual needs.
There's another thing I've picked up on your website while preparing for this interview. There's a statement on one of the pages that said, the research continues to show that academic success in school is less a marker for future success than evidence of knowing how to work well within the school system. And I thought, wow, what an interesting statement. Did you write that?
No, I didn't. That was Lael, our co-creator, but I absolutely agree with what she's written.
Tell me more.
I think absolutely. So I guess we come from a view that a mark doesn't mean that you can then apply that learning in real life context. You could also not have the social skills to be part of a team, and you might not be a collaborative person. So I think a lot of workplaces these days are looking for creative people who have those really people smart skills. They're hardworking, they are humble. Um, so they're looking for much more than just a grade, which for a lot of people who get high grades, they find learning really easy and they can read a textbook and understand what it means. And then a lot of the time, exams and assignments are regurgitating that information, where we're trying to create learners that will find that learning for themselves. They don't just read about it and regurgitate it, really understanding it and embedding it, and then being able to manipulate it, be creative with it, and take it even wider.
I see not forcing children to regurgitate whatever they're reading as a critical element. It has happened to me. I remember in primary and secondary schools, I think the teachers I had have sort of universally destroyed my love for reading because they forced this regurgitation of material, and I just hated it. And I didn't pick up books back until my late 20s. So it's important we don't do that, I think.
Yeah, and we get that a lot. And so when we have older children come from other schools, generally what the parents will say to me is that they've lost their love of learning. And it is because they're being given a worksheet where there's a right and a wrong answer. Um, so and I also think unis have changed in what they're doing. So they're doing a lot more collaborative learning. They're letting children in that haven't necessarily received a good ATAR, but they can see that they've got the personal capabilities to be successful. And I think same again with the workplaces. I don't think workplaces are putting such an emphasis on a university degree. Certainly, some professions you absolutely need to. If you want to be a doctor, they're not going to let you in without that. But I think there's a lot of places that have moved with the times.
Let me ask you a question about holistic understanding of concepts and issues, because what I'm wondering is, in what ways does your school promote interdisciplinary learning to encourage connections across different subject areas, which is really important in a modern world? Not that it wasn't important historically, but it's probably more important now than ever, because we are so focused on one specialization, and we're really not seeing what's happening on the edges, and because that's how everyone's being educated.
So that's part of the Reggio Emilia approach, where you're looking at concepts and then really unpacking those concepts and bringing in the different subjects or learning areas as you go along so that it is more authentic and meaningful. And we really try not to see any subject sitting in isolation either. So, for example, one of our older groups is working on a fish farm at the moment. So that's actually a thread that has come through from last year. The children really enjoy cooking, and we grow our own produce here, and they love fishing. And they did a living on the land project last year, which they went and they caught their fish and then they cooked it and ate it. And then they were like, why can't we have our own fish farm? And we were like, sure. So we're very good at saying yes to all of the ideas, because the children absolutely have the best ideas. And you can imagine the learning that has come into creating a fish farm. So there's been literacy in that they had to write me a persuasive letter on why we should have a fish farm. They have done an awful lot of reading on what type of fish and what's the water need to be. The science has come into it because we've got a dam on our property, so that's what we're turning into the fish farm. They've gone down and tested the water quality. The mass has come in with the height of the dam, and they've created the jetty, and we're creating a boardwalk. So you've got area, perimeter. Money comes into it because they needed to get a quote on how much it was going to cost us. And then I put a challenge to them to fundraise some money to contribute to it. So they're actually doing a sausage sizzle today as part of their fundraising for it. So you can see how naturally so much learning has come through that project and will continue to do so in a really fun, purposeful way that really hooks the children in. And I would argue that by doing it that way, the learning is greater and they're covering more of the curriculum than what they would if we said, okay, we're going to do a unit on dinosaurs.
That is very cool indeed. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the way you're setting it up, this environment is 100% more conducive to faster learning. So that is really amazing. I love it. The other thing that I've picked up on your website was something about the program that is designed around what you guys call personal competencies. Would you be able to explain what these competencies are and maybe how are they resonating with the children day to day?
Sure. So there's so many different competencies that we try and foster here. So things from the critical thinking skills to collaborative learning to, you could go on forever. And I think it comes down to our approach and our style of learning, and then also our focus on the wellbeing as well. So because we're wanting children who are thinking for themselves and are feeling safe to question what we're doing and question each other, question the guides, just trying to create that safe setting where they feel safe enough to be able to work on those skills.
Looking at my next question, you have already partially responded to this by giving me examples of the children fishing and doing fundraising and things of that nature. But I'm wondering if there's anything you would like to add to it. Can you maybe share additional examples of innovative or experiential learning opportunities that the school offers to enhance students' critical thinking skills, perhaps creativity, and just general problem-solving abilities?
So the concept that our older two groups are looking at in line with environmental responsibility is progress. So a thread that has come through that is entrepreneurship. They've looked a lot of history. So looking at the history to then learn so we can go forward. And what the guides are really good at are giving the children provocations and questions to get them to think deeper and think critically around what they're doing and what others are doing. And then they might come up with ways that they would like to improve certain circumstances or what's happening in the world, and really embed that understanding that they can be agents of change.
All right, let's move on. It probably isn't news to you, and I'm guessing you're thinking about this almost every day, if not every day. But we obviously live in this age of hyper-overstimulation with different electronic devices. The screens are absolutely everywhere in cars and iPads, iPhones, fridges have screens. It's getting ridiculous out there. So it's important to really expose young minds to all things natural and build a sort of a reverence for nature and teach them how to be in awe of our surrounding universe. And what I really love about your school, when I look at the photography that's featured on your website, is that it's nested in what looks like a very organic, natural landscape. So my question to you is, what kind of impact does this have on children? What have you personally observed?
Another topic that I could talk a very long time about. And I think you're right, screens are everywhere. So if we can provide them with an environment where they don't have access to screens so frequently, that is a really positive thing. I think what you see, because we don't do a lot on screens or on technology, is that connection to nature. So they actually want to be outside. They don't want to be inside learning. They want to be out using all the senses in their learning. They have a greater appreciation, I think, for learning, and that fosters that sense of wonder and curiosity, which is one of our values. I think you see a shift in wellbeing. I think technology is really important and it has its place in society and it's definitely not going away. But I guess our concern with technology is that it is a numbing tool. So quite often, even adults do it. You jump on a screen to numb those feelings and to not actually kind of take you away. And you go to a restaurant and you see families out for dinner and they're all on their phones and they're missing that connection with each other in those moments. So I think we're seeing that strong connection between the children with their learning, with our environment, and again back to even themselves and who they are. It's always been part of the plan is to not have it, and I think our families do appreciate that the children are not on screens when they're here. I think, again, there is a place for technology in learning and in schools. It's just making sure that we're really intentional and understand why we're using a device. I do struggle with the concept when you see a class of 25 foundation children on an iPad for hours a day when they should be playing and creating. And when they're on an iPad, they're not critical thinkers. They're not having those conversations with their peers and questioning each other and developing those really important skills.
Yeah, again, it would be hard to disagree with you. I mean, I work in technology space and I love technology. We're using technology to record this interview. How fantastic is that? But there's something with the devices and what they're doing to kids. It's almost like they become these channels of hyperconsumption because
Correct.
there's so much content that streams into them and kids get addicted to it. And the technology itself is not being used to necessarily create new beautiful things, new art or new other improved technology. And that addiction really quickly becomes a problem.
And I think too, if people are, or not people, if children are sitting and they're on iPads for a lot of the day, even from a physical standpoint, they're not developing their fine motor skills as they would if they were cutting and painting and building. Even their gross motor skills, their core. Children need to be active.
Oh, absolutely. I think, if you want to see children that are mentally strong, physically healthy, and mentally healthy, integrating physical movement into the everyday is absolutely critical and a must. And it does worry me that, I hear that some of the schools are banning things like recess because some of the boys are getting unruly and starting fights and pushing other kids around. If you're going to ban that, you're going to see some pretty negative outcomes pretty quickly because they will not essentially have an outlet to use the natural energy, and kind of exhaust it in the real world. Considering your mission and what you're trying to do, and this question is by no means an attack on mainstream, but obviously what you're trying to do at Woodline Primary is a little bit different. It's an alternative to mainstream with some added value elements. At least that's what it looks like on the surface to me. So in order to continue creating something special and continue pushing the school in an interesting direction, I'm wondering, what does it take for you to show up and be the best version of yourself for the children and for the parents every single day? You seem to be truly in love with the job and see it as a privilege. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, I love that question because it certainly has been a lot of hard work and it's not easy to build a school. And we are only in our fourth year, so we are still building it in some ways. So, really, our people are everything. So, it's our recruitment process has been really critical in making sure that we're getting are the educators who truly do align with us, because it is a lot of work, as you said. So they need to be really passionate about what we're doing, align with the philosophy, and be really invested in it, so that they do have the energy and the drive to keep building the school to be the best that it can be. A big part of what we're doing is looking after the wellbeing of our team, and that comes from the top down. So our board look after me, because they know if they do that, I can then look after the team. And we know if we look after the team, they can look after the children. And so we try and bring joy for the team. We start each morning with connection time. So we start together, and that's another great way to check in. Our executive team can see if anyone's maybe a bit unbalanced that morning and if they need support. The team know that they can ask to be tapped out if something's feeling big or if a certain child's triggering them that day. And then we really give them the listening space to go, okay, what's going on for you? Why are you feeling triggered? What might that child be bringing up for you? We're really big on self-development, and so our professional learning can sometimes revolve around that. So really doing the self-development work ourselves so that we can be our best versions, and just creating that sense of trust and safety with the team, that they can be vulnerable with us if they're not having the best day.
I have had quite a lot of conversations with people that are not super happy about the choices. So they're not happy with the public system for numerous reasons, and they're not super happy with the private system because of the extraordinary cost attached to it. So there's a lot of people that I came across that had this brilliant idea of saying, okay, this is not going to work and that is not going to work. I'm going to start a brand new school. And then they go into this process, find out how heavily regulated and legislated the schooling system is, and they cannot tap out of it after a while, after trying, after putting a little bit of effort. But I was wondering if for people who are contemplating actually doing this properly and putting, their life energy into it, do you have any advice on how to best go about it?
It would be to try and travel to see schools that are similar to what they're doing. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, you really need to have a property and financial backing. So that would be actually the start point. It would then to be look at the VRQA, or if you're in Victoria, the VRQA website to see what is required. There are a lot of rules and restrictions and guidelines that have to be met. But I think once the VRQA knew that our founders were not going away, they were actually really supportive and helped us get the approval across the line. And it's also then about networking and making connections. So we support other schools that are starting up. We have other schools reach out and connect, so that networking as well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that sound advice. Let us pivot a little bit. I'm keen to find out from you, how do you engage parents and families and the broader community in supporting student learning and well-being? And what sort of collaborative efforts do you have underway to really strengthen these partnerships properly?
So community is very important to us. So we, I guess it starts at the enrolment step, where we're really making sure that our families are aligned with what we're doing and that it's a good fit. And then we offer different workshops. So if parents are wanting some parenting workshops, or really anything that they bring up, we try and offer those workshops so that they can learn more. And then we have a Woodline Family Association. So they meet termly, but then they also have little subcommittees. So we have a garden club. We do lots of fundraising with that group. They work on social events for the families. And we're always looking for ways to have families involved. So we invite them into the learning spaces. So they might like to come and read with the children. They might like to support our cooking program. They might like to go on excursions. And we really do see that homeschool partnership is vital in what we're doing.
That is really awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you're putting effort into creating such a high level of integration in a broader community that can only have a good impact on the school itself and your young students. Let's talk about continuous improvement. How do you create a culture of inquiry and reflection between students, teachers, your administrators, and how your feedback mechanism utilize and at what frequency to really properly inform decision making and promote growth of your school.
So feedback is really important to us at Woodline. It's actually one of our main goals this year in our annual implementation plan. And it's so feedback, but more formative feedback. So where are you at? What are we seeing? And what is next for you? So we see it as an ongoing process. There's not due dates for it. It's a daily thing. It's a verbal conversation with the child. It might be written on their workbooks. And then we have regular feedback that goes to the families. So we do that through an online program where we can take a photo of the child or their learning and then write a comment with this is what they did, this is what we're seeing, and this is what is the next step for them. So more formative rather than summative. Then for our team, our exec team gives regular feedback and timely feedback, but we also have formal feedback sessions as well. But then on top of the ongoing feedback for the families, we do connection conferences every term. So every term, the families get an opportunity to meet with the guides for that more formal feedback. And also semesterly reports. So that is a requirement for our funding. We do need to do the formal semester reports. We've just tried to adapt them to be more woodlined. So we talk about woodlining things. So we try and be creative and stretch things as far as we can, but also making sure we're doing our due diligence.
For the sake of transparency, my desire here, my wish is not to make this episode about the sort of negative things that are happening in state schools or more in the mainstream. I'm sort of more interested in understanding why your school is different, and that's how we've been conducting this interview so far. That said, one thing that does come out in some of the conversations that I have been having over the last few months is that the state schools are starting to fail a little bit, and there's multiple reasons why this is happening across multiple dimensions of analysis. Like, people have obviously very different opinions and very different expectations for how things should be. I was just wondering about your personal point of view. Would you be able to give us a bit of an insight into why you think, if you think at all, the mainstream and the state system is starting to struggle a little bit?
I think there's a bit that I can see. I think there's room for improvement. I think especially in the growth areas, so the suburbs outside of Melbourne in particular, or maybe Geelong, the growth has been quite significant, and I don't know if the facilities and the resources have been there to actually set the schools up properly. So you're seeing huge numbers of children in schools. You can have 1,000 primary children all in the one space, and so you go, how does a child be seen and heard if they're one of 1,000 children? I think a lot of the schools are, even the older schools that are more established, are growing as well, and therefore they're needing new buildings, and there's more buildings but less space for children to run around and play. So I think there's a lot of play missing, not only during the play times but also during learning times as well. I think there's a lot of pressure on educators to cover the curriculum and tick the boxes, and that's what the focus is, and the summative assessments. And so that's what they're working to. That's the pressure that they're getting, and they don't have permission to go slower, go deeper, go with the children's interests. So I think it's, rather than the government trying to really control everything so tightly, loosen it up a little bit, give schools autonomy and give them some freedom to do what they need to do for their children in their context.
Well, I think it would be very nice to see this loosening up that you've just mentioned here. I do not see much evidence for it, though, because everything that the state seems to be doing is increasing control in so many different areas of life. So unless parents band together and start voting differently or advocating for more relaxed controls, if I can say that, I just don't think we're going to see a lot of change in a positive direction. We'll see a lot of change in a negative direction. All right, let's continue. I'm just very mindful of the time, and we're coming close to the end of the interview. I'm simply going to run out of time. There's a couple of questions I still want to ask you. One of those questions is the future. When you're looking into the future, how are you thinking about the school's aspiration and goals for further advancing its mission and realizing its vision for education? And how do you specifically envision the schools evolving in the coming years to really meet the needs of students in an ever-changing world?
Yeah, great question. So, as I said, we're adding our last group next year. So, as far as our growth goes, it will be such a lovely place to be where we will be at capacity. So, we've got to focus on facilities for the next 5 years. So, making sure that we have the learning spaces that are required to offer the opportunities that we would like to offer the children. I see us just getting consolidating on what we're doing, but I think when you're a school, regardless of what context you're in, it's always a work in progress. So you're always looking to improve what you're doing. And I think that comes back to the feedback that you were talking about. So really analysing how it's feeling for everybody and where the possibilities and opportunities are. But one of our main goals too is to really connect with some secondary schools so that we have some schools that we feel are a good feeder. We're a school for us. So that's a question we get asked a lot. So the children come to Woodline, but then what about secondary? And we're not ready to build Woodline Secondary at this point in time because we really want to do justice to the primary school. So wanting to have those strong established relationships with secondary schools and helping that transition for the children. We've introduced a rites of passage framework for our year sixes this year, which has been, well, actually we introduced it last year and has been amazing, and we'll continue to build on that and refine that process. So making sure our year sixes are ready for whatever school they end up going to. And I can see that that would be a really strong focus for the next few years. We're about to seek feedback from our first lot of graduates last year. We had 4 year sixes graduate, so we would love to get feedback from the children and the families on what else could we have done to help that transition, what else did they need, and so that we can really help that leap.
There is one question I should have asked a little bit earlier in the interview, and that question is about your selection criteria. The school is very attractive on the outside. When you look at the website and you look at your materials, it looks fantastic. So I'm guessing you would end up having a bit of a demand-supply issue, with demand being very high and you capping the number of students at 120 next year, having a fixed and sort of limited supply of seats and spots. So please tell me a little bit, how do you go about selecting the students, considering you capping them at 120 as early as next year?
We definitely have a high demand and have waiting lists in different year levels, and we have had families move from New Zealand and Adelaide and Melbourne and Newcastle for the school. So how we determine that is usually in order of who's put the expression of interest in first, but then it's really ensuring that the families align. So it's more about the caregivers than it is about the child. So yes, we want to be able to make sure we can meet the child's needs, but do the parents truly align with our philosophy? Or do they think they do, but they're still going to really care about the NAPLAN results? So trying to discern whether the parents are fully on board with what we're doing and what we provide, and making sure that we're clear in that process as well. And then that's really it. It is just making sure that the families align with our philosophy.
So there's no exam for the parents.
No exam. It's a chat with me and a tour around the school. No, and I think we've in the past had some parents say things that they know we're probably looking for, but at the end of the day, it doesn't work if you don't fully align. You won't stay. Yeah.
There's a couple of things worth mentioning here. Number one, it's a big testament how good the school must be that you have parents willing to move from overseas. And number two, personally, hats off to the parents who are willing to do that as well. It's not easy to move your life, but they must care about the children to such an extent, and also have faith in what you guys are building at Woodline Primary to do this, which is really awesome. I think this would be a good place for us to conclude the interview, Claire. For people who want to find you, who want to find your website or have a look at your social channels, can you tell us what's the best way to go about it?
So yes, we have a website, but our main source is Instagram. So we actually have 3 Instagram accounts. So Lael, who's the co-creator of the school, operates our Woodline Primary account. I've got my principal account, so I've documented every day of my journey as a founding principal. And then we've got a Connecting Woodline account, which our deputy principal runs, which is more sharing what the guides are doing.
For those of you in the audience, I'm going to put all those links into the show notes, so check it out there. Claire, thank you very much for today. Really enjoyed talking to you, really enjoyed learning about Woodline Primary. You're doing fantastic work with your teachers and building something truly special. I think as an alternative to mainstream is a very, very attractive institution. So well done and keep up the amazing work. If I was a little bit younger, I would definitely want to be a student at your school.
That's what we get told by all of the adults that we tour around.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. Again, Claire, thank you very much, and hopefully chat to you at some point in the future. Look after yourself. All the best.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
That's it. This was Claire Bartlett from Woodline Primary. I hope you have enjoyed this interview and managed to learn something from it. I have the utmost respect for what the founders, Claire, and her staff have managed to put together. A real alternative to what we deem as normal and a challenge to outdated mainstream. I'm impressed and I wish everyone at Woodline Primary all the best for the future. I hope they will grow from strength to strength and inspire other entrepreneurial educators to take risks and help build a bigger ecosystem of alternative schools, not just in this country, but all over the world. Thank you for your attention and see you next time.